Hi, this is Andy Armacost, UND's president, and thanks for tuning in today. An opportunity to engage with me and the entire executive council and many of our leaders across our campus. And we're here today to answer any of your questions, likely focused on COVID or the spring semester, but it might be that you have other topics that you'd like to address as well. So start thinking about your questions so we can get right to them as soon as you pose them. So in the meantime, let me say a couple words as you're typing. First, many thanks to everything that you have done this fall semester to give our students a strong educational experience in spite of all the disruptions. It really has taken a great team effort to pull off what we've pulled off. And no greater thanks go to our pandemic working group, who has been meeting diligently since the middle of March to make great things happen for our campus. They've left no stone unturned and have really done incredible work to make sure all the logistics and the safety precautions have been in place. And I wish desperately that we could have met more and done more face-to-face this fall. But the good news is, with the prospect of the vaccine on the horizon, we definitely want to keep moving forward slowly while minimizing the risk to the campus. And this sense of balance is something we've really strived for throughout the fall semester. And it's led to our decision to return on January 11th to continue our education in the manner that we executed in the fall semester, which is a combination of hybrid learning, online learning, and some purely face-to-face classes as well. And the operative words, as you know, will continue to be things like hand washing, face covering, distancing, avoiding large groups, and of course, testing. And I just wanted to let you know, and we can say more about it, and Jed Shivers might say a little bit more about this as well, but we are modifying our quarantine plans for those who are identified as close contacts. And that will ease their burden considerably. The changes we're making are consistent with CDC guidelines, which reduce the amount of time that one would spend in quarantine if they're identified as a close contact. In addition, we'll have cheaper and more widely available tests that give results in as quick as 15 minutes. So the testing will be more rapid, and this will allow us to respond more effectively to the spread of the pandemic. But of course, we're hoping that vaccine comes sooner than later to our campus. But the testing approaches and the changes to CDC guidelines are truly game changers for us. So with that said, I wish you in advance a peaceful winter break after we get through the final 2 weeks of this semester. And once again, thanks for all your tremendous work to pull off the unthinkable, offering a safe campus in the wake of the pandemic as we try to keep our important UND mission alive and well. So thanks, and over to Jed for your comments and the questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jed Shivers, and I'm the Vice President for Finance and Operations and the COVID lead person here at UND. And I'm so happy to say we have gotten a question or two so far, so I don't have to talk and absorb all the dead air. So first question, I'm going to probably try to answer myself and then turn to my colleagues. Really good question. I'm wondering if those who are working remotely all fall should expect to work the exact same way this coming spring. That's a terrific question. So the way I'm going to start off by answering is right now we really are encouraging people who can work remotely to do so. Here in Twomley, we do have a much reduced staff presence. And I think that's fine. People are, able to do that, and we encourage them to do so. So the way I'm going to answer the question is to say, it really depends upon what the situation is on the ground in terms of, what we're seeing in terms of infection rates and all the other stuff that that we monitor each and every day. And so it'll partly be a function of, what's happening. But my sense at the moment is that we're likely to continue in a fairly remote working status where possible for staff, and of course faculty are able to decide how they want to deliver their coursework. I think that's going to continue, and then we'll work our way through that as things change. If we have ubiquitous uptake on a highly available vaccine, that'll obviously help resolve things, but that requires the vaccine to be available and for people to utilize it. So I think those are the things that we'll be monitoring as they work our way through this question. But it's a great question. What a wonderful way to start off. Anyone have anything to add to that? Okay. Next question is, and here I'm going to, I think, address this to Provost Storrs. I have a question regarding fall 2021. The current guidance from the registrar's office that fall 2021 will be conducted just like fall 2020 and spring 2021 with COVID-19 capacities and restrictions. What particular metrics will UND be tracking, and at what point in time will a potential change to this guidance be provided?
Hi, everyone. Debbie Storrs, Interim Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. It's a great question. You know, what we're hoping is with the vaccine, we'll have a lot more people who are protected, that we can shift into more face-to-face and not do as many online and remote. We'll have to do a kind of a wait and see until we see when the vaccine is available, when everybody can get vaccinated, et cetera. So at this point in time, Scott Carell and I have decided, let's just plan for the fall to be hybrid and face-to-face online, so sort of a mix. Again, that will change, and we'll communicate as quickly as possible with the community once we have more information. But at this point in time, that's the plan. Ideally, we want to go back to as normal as possible, but that's going to be really contingent on the vaccinations.
So our next question, I'm going to turn to, I think, President Armacost, Cara Halgren, and Rosy Dub. This is a great question, and I'm going to preface it by saying it's a great question that we're even able to ask this question, which is UND going to require faculty and staff to get the vaccine? So the reason why it's a great question is, yeah, there's a vaccine that's coming. That's really terrific. And, you know, profound gratitude towards the National Institutes of Health and all the other people who developed the technology to make what is a world record in vaccine development. These things have taken many, many years in the past. And so while it may not seem like it, the development of this vaccine is quite remarkable and is a testament to all of the investment that our country has made in biotechnology. So let me turn that first over to President Armacost. The question is mandatory for faculty and staff to get the vaccine, and then commentary from Dr. Halgren and from Rosy Dub.
Well, it is a great question, Jed, and the discussions are happening on campus currently about both mandatory vaccinations and/or mandatory testing. And for testing, at this point, we're not going to mandate testing, just strongly encourage them. But back to the vaccine, which is what your question was about. There are, I think, there's some legal questions that are being worked by the state, the state system, the NDUS. And we're having active, or soon to have active discussions about what the whole system is going to do. I think it's important that if we do have mandatory vaccines, that it's got to be a statewide initiative, that it's got to be system-wide and not just each individual campus making their own decisions. But right now it's undecided about what we'll do, but there are, just like with many other vaccines, many people request exceptions to those vaccines as well. So we have to, it's a kind of a thorny issue that we're going to work through. Again, public safety issues versus rights to make private decisions with your healthcare. So, and Josh Wynne might have some thoughts on this as well, but I'll turn it over to Rosy first.
Hi, I'm Rosy from UND, the director of the UND COVID medical response. I'm curious as to see what Dr. Wynne would say about this. My understanding is that, as the questions that President Armacost stated, the question about mandating it, I don't believe that we can technically mandate the vaccine because of it being under emergency use authorization. However, we're checking into that legally, and there are other incentives that can be used. Institutions can set up their own incentives to make it appropriate for people to choose the vaccine. We really want people to recognize the vaccine as this is our step towards getting back to a new normal. We're hoping that out of our own personal choices, we'll make the choice to keep ourselves and our community healthy. We need a high uptake. Our flu vaccine for our state is typically about 50% uptake. We need to achieve 70% of people taking the COVID vaccine to receive the herd immunity that we need to function as we are used to or having a new normal. Dr. Wynne, do you have more to add to that?
Thanks very much, Rosie. Yeah, I actually have two comments. It's on the can and the should side of things. On the can side, although I'll obviously defer to the Attorney General's office, I don't think there will be any real question whether the state, I'm not sure about the university system, but that the state can mandate vaccination. This has been tried and answered in the United States Supreme Court in the famous case of Jacobson v. Massachusetts. The more important thing, though, I think, is the issue you raise, Rosie, which is, do we even need to do that? And the important thing that you referred to is this concept of what we call herd immunity. That is, based on the particulars of this particular virus, how much of our community, the herd, do we need to have protected to protect essentially all of us? And as you indicate, that number appears to be somewhere between 50 and 70%. And the concept of herd immunity is that as long as enough of us, in this case, to use your number, 70%, have immunity to the virus, all of us get protected, or almost all of us. So even someone who is not vaccinated gets protection from those of us who are. The other important thing to remember about this herd immunity is it's the sum of people who have natural immunity because they had COVID in the past and people who have vaccinated, to the best of our knowledge. So we may not have to have 70% of everyone vaccinated if people who have had COVID before also have sufficient immunity that they can ward off the infection. So I think the bottom line is that we can probably satisfy both groups. That is, the group who, for whatever reason, would rather not get vaccinated. I think that it would probably be acceptable and not to try to force it. And yet the rest of us who are willing to get vaccinated or get COVID inadvertently help protect everyone. So I think the issue of mandatory vaccination, it may well be less of an issue, and we can still get to acceptable community protection without having to coerce people who may feel that they don't want to do it. Thank you.
And Jed, one other comment too, there were two other questions on there, is when do we expect it on campus, the vaccine? And we have no way of knowing at this point. Operation Warp Speed is just now ramping up, and we'll just have to wait and see what kind of progress they make. The second question is, will each member have a choice? Will they be able to make a choice between the type of vaccine that they get? And the writer wrote something about an RNA versus a traditional vaccine. And my understanding is that both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are RNA based. So in terms of the style, you'll get the same one. We don't know which vaccine will come to our campus at this point. So we don't know. And Josh, I don't know if you had any other comments on that area.
The only thing I'd add, Andy, is that it does matter which of these two vaccines you get, because you need to get the second dose of the same vaccine as you had in the first place. The Pfizer, oh yes, both of them are so-called mRNA vaccines. That's never been done before. And the Pfizer one is a 3-week interval between first and the second dose, and the Moderna is a 4-week interval. But we don't know yet from the state which of the vaccines we may get or in which quantity. As President Armacost said, the actual distribution is still undetermined, although based on a recommendation last week from an advisory group at the national level, the state has also been working on tiers of priorities for distribution. And I would imagine that many of us are going to be, thankfully, in one of the lower tiers, meaning we don't have high-risk groups. So almost certainly the first group to be offered the vaccine will be frontline healthcare workers, particularly those working on COVID units, followed by long-term care, eventually for ordinary citizens who are at higher risk due to older age or comorbid conditions. And then for most of the UND population, it will be beyond that. But given the amount of vaccine that is being produced, even with some of the hiccups, this is going on at warp speed, as the president said, and it is truly amazing that we went from the discovery of the virus to a vaccine in under a year. That has never been done before in the history of the world.
I don't know if anybody is interested in this, but you've probably heard too that the vaccines are like 95% effective. Excellent results with them.
Okay, just worth pointing out, if we get the Pfizer vaccine, we already have an ultra low freezer here, so we can store it, so we're good to go.
Can I mention one other thing about that, Jed, since there has been some concern about the ultra low temperature that's required for the Pfizer vaccine. It has a shorter half-life when not under ultra cold conditions, so that we don't anticipate a huge problem even at universities that don't have the ultra low temperature freezers.
Thank you. So we're going to switch a little bit here and talk a little bit about budgetary anxiety. I think this is a good question, probably needs to be addressed. So question is, with the coronavirus and already anticipating low enrollment, how big of a cut to our budget are you expecting, and will these cuts be done at the college level? People are very concerned for stability and job security. Those are good questions. So I'm going to answer them in the following way, and then I invite my colleagues to answer also. First of all, we were concerned about what our budget would look like for the current semester that we're in, the fall semester, because we really didn't know what COVID was going to do. And through the fall semester, I would say we're doing better than we anticipated. So that's good news. What we don't know about, of course, is what's going to happen in the second semester. So nobody's going out and popping any champagne or celebrating, because we really want to see what the second semester will bring. I think that testament to the ability of people like Dr. Holm and Dr. Storrs and all the faculty to continue to provide pretty high quality educational services to everyone, educational products to everyone, so far as keeping people here. We're just going to have to wait and see, and we'll adjust accordingly. So I can't give anybody any kind of absolute assurance. I don't know that anyone, around the country, unless they have multiple billions of dollars of endowment, is in a position to do that in higher education at this point. But we are better off than we anticipated so far. We'll see what happens. Of course, we also, worth noting, we did get the governor's budget, and we appreciate the economic context in which he framed that budget. And but we'll be working with the State Board of Higher Education, which has a pretty clear position on, what those going forward budgets can be. So I can't give you definitive answers at this point, but I will say that we're a bit better off than we anticipated. Dr. Storrs.
I'd just like to add that, we are better off than anticipated, but we still don't know what the outcome will be in terms of spring enrollment. And so I think we're all very concerned that students will be able to take some time off, regroup, and come back either in person or online and continue their education here at UND. I wanted to thank everybody for doing such a great job of supporting students and being flexible when they requested it. I know it's been an enormous amount of work on the part of faculty. The other thing that's really interesting is all faculty and staff at UND have access to the Starfish data report, the dashboard that is available now. And we've done a quick look at that, and it looks like that there's not more flags, and those are where faculty go in and raise a flag, and flags are typically of concern. There doesn't seem to be overwhelmingly more flags this semester compared to last fall, which is a good sign. There are some variations by faculty raising more flags. And I'm not sure how to interpret that. One interpretation is that faculty are just using Starfish more to communicate to students when they're concerned. So take a look at the Starfish report and see if you see any patterns, and then either you can reach out to students or you can have our academic advisors reach out to students, because we want them to know we're here to support them and help them make good decisions for the spring. Thank you.
Okay, got a quick one here, and I'm going to direct this one to Associate Vice President for Human Resources, Peggy Varberg. How will snow days work this year? If UND calls a snow day and I work at home, do I have to work? So the question is, all right, I'm working home, I'm working remotely. There's a snow day called. Are you going to make me work that day?
Yeah, so there's a little discussion around that very question. As we move forward, even out of COVID world, we've established that employees at all levels can work successfully remotely for those that have that capacity in their position. So I don't think we have a 100% answer at this point. It's something that's being discussed by all 11 schools and the system office. So it requires, if we were to move to that level, it would require some policy changes. And so, you know, I can't give you a definite answer on that at this point.
Okay, another quick one is, this is one that I can talk about, I think Associate Vice President Mike Pieper might want to comment on it as well as Provost Storrs, and also Dr. Cara Halgren. Has there been any thought of shutting down campus during the winter break? I can honestly say I haven't thought of it at all. So that's the way I would answer this. And I'm not sure, given the fact that there are activities that are academic that really occur fairly continuously, as well as maintaining the campus and providing services to students who cannot necessarily go home, right, for the holidays. I don't think that's a practical reality, but I invite anyone who wishes to comment to please do. Or if you're good.
Yeah, no, hi, I'm Cara Halgren, Vice President for Student Affairs and Diversity. And Jed, you had it right. Our residence halls and dining services will continue to stay open to serve students over the break.
Any other comments on this? Mike, do you want to talk about?
I guess the only comment that I would make is, you know, there's certainly less events and activities happening than in normal years, but I would think that, you know, on a department by department basis, if you decide to maybe take leave at the same time where, you know, your building or your office suite or whatever could be shut down between breaks, I would just ask that people reach out to facilities so that we can be aware and monitor it differently than it would be if it was being occupied.
Okay, thank you. This is a question that's a good question because it's not related to COVID, but I think is of import to our campus, certainly. This is about the diversity and equality, equity and inclusion projects, the task force that's going on. And basically what it says is, of course, the next step will be implementation of measures to improve these issues at UND. Will each college, school, and department have an opportunity to hold meetings to discuss the report's findings and possible areas for implementation within our entity? So Dr. Armacost, I'm gonna turn this one over to you.
I'll say 2 words. I would hope so. I guess that was more than 2 words. I would hope those conversations happen at all levels of the institution. If you haven't read the report yet, please take the time to do it. The work of this task force has been exemplary. Cara Halgren and Tom Bequee-Bailey did an amazing job as the co-chairs of the committee, and their work will provide a starting point for us to adopt these initiatives into the strategic plan. Now we have to make. There was some question about timing as well. When does it happen? Right now, we're in the communication phase, taking the report and trying to speak with as many people about the report, whether it's legislators, whether it's campus members, local community members, et cetera. And so the next step is to start the process of prioritizing, figuring out what can be accomplished, figuring out resources that we might need or might have, and then making a judgment about how we build these ideas into the strategic plan for the university. So it's great work, but conversations happening at all levels of the university. That's exactly what I think the task force had hoped would happen. So I would encourage colleges and schools to do that. Cara?
I would agree absolutely with everything that you said. And I just want to do a special shout out to my colleague, Dr. Tom Bailey, because while his work references the diversity and equity, inclusion and equity task force, the work is his. I mean, he did all of the heavy lifting in terms of putting all the information from the subgroups together to produce the final document. And so he deserves all of the credit for outstanding work. It's been a privilege to be a part of this group. And I think the suggestion about coming to each of the colleges is a great one. And in fact, I will follow up with Vice President Storrs on that after we're done with this call.
Okay, thank you. Quick question for Peggy Varberg. Will the Families First Coronavirus Response Act be extended beyond 12/31/20, or has it been extended?
Two parts. It has not been extended as of yet, and we are hoping that it gets extended. In some of the information I've read regarding the stimulus that's potentially on the table, they haven't specifically called any attention to that piece. They've called attention to furthering employment opportunities, those kinds of things. So we are watching closely response to that and trying to glean some answer that we can share with the UND community. But it is right now it's on the table as expiring December 31st.
Thank you. Two quick questions for Rosy, and I'm going to combine these questions. The first question is, are there any resources to get antibody tests? So you can comment, Rosy, if you would, on what's happening with that. But the second question is, I think this relates to the vaccine, so I might be mistaken, but I think the person is wondering, is the immunity from the vaccine only 90 days? Because that's what we were talking about earlier. So if you could please comment on additional testing, and I think I have it right, immunity post-vaccination.
Sure. The antibody testing is available through your private provider. Antibody testing can be sent to State Health Lab or to your reference labs. We are not offering that in any mass testing events, as the value of that is still questionable as to whether or not it does prove immunity due to, we don't know what level of antibodies are necessary or how long those antibodies are protectant. So yes, you can go to your private healthcare provider and request antibody testing. The other part was the immunity from the vaccine. I think I saw some of the questions too saying that you have presumed immunity for 90 days after having the disease. We do still believe that that is true. We are hoping, we don't know the answer to how long the vaccine is protective. We are hoping that it provides, a lengthier course of protection. Right now, our flu vaccine is good for generally a year at a time. The answer to will you have to get an annual vaccine for COVID is unknown at this time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So interesting, some more conversation on vaccination. I'm going to do another one of these questions. And I don't know that there's an answer here, but I think it's worth talking about briefly. Although individual rights certainly must be held to utmost importance, that individuals' rights not to vaccinate has a potential for strong negative community outcomes. Will individuals who have elected not to vaccinate have some restrictions on their work behavior depending upon the nature of their work behavior? Conversely, will there be an incentive for those who vaccinate to vaccinate and avoid this issue related to individual rights? So really interesting question. I can comment quickly on this. I think we have a history here of mandating vaccinations, but with significant exceptions for things like religious liberty issues, et cetera. And I imagine that that will probably continue. And I think Dr. Halgren might want to comment on that further, as well as Rosy Dub. I would say, in addition to that, that perfection is not something that's required in vaccination. We do not require 100% of everyone to be vaccinated. But at least, as we talked about earlier, 70% would be good. So that's something that we are going to have to explore as we have a better understanding of just how much vaccine we have available to us and how rapidly that the ability to vaccinate people will proliferate through our campus community. It's going to be a little while before people other than healthcare providers and those in nursing homes are going to get this. So I think that's something that we also want to keep in mind. Anybody want to add to this? Nope. I'm sensing happiness with that answer, or at least, well, we'll leave it at that. This is a great question. And this is one for Rosy. If people have had COVID, should they still get vaccinated?
Yes, we do recommend they still receive the vaccine. If you're acutely ill with COVID, that is probably not the best time to get the vaccine, just for the reason that your body's immune system is using all of its energy to fight the COVID itself. So the maximum efficacy of the vaccine would not be to your advantage. So if you have an active case of COVID, yes, we would like you to get vaccinated, but please just wait a week or two or through a certain length of time before you get vaccinated. Not when you're acutely ill, but yes, it is recommended to vaccinate.
Thank you. Quick question for Debbie Storrs. I and likely many other faculty am currently teaching a completely online course. Nearly all students in this course complete exams online, but one student, not in state, not even in Upper Midwest, has requested to complete her final exam via paper and pencil at our location with a proctor approved by me. I assume this is acceptable, but UND has specifically said all finals must be completed online. Debbie, you want to just comment on that quickly?
Sure, I responded directly to the person, but I'd be happy to respond to everybody. You know, one of the reasons why we requested all finals be online is to encourage students when they're done with their classes to return wherever their home may be, rather than to bring them to campus to take the exams. In this case, obviously it makes sense to have some flexibility. And so I've responded to that person. Of course, we would try to, we can accommodate that. But the goal really is not to have any on-campus finals, even if we had the COVID protocol in place, because we want to encourage students to go back home when they're done with their classes.
Thank you. So let's move on to a little bit of campus life. Question is, for Dr. Halgren, will adjustments to room capacities be considered in the spring semester if COVID numbers decrease?
No, unfortunately not, but we are cautiously optimistic for fall, and we're crossing our fingers. So we know that students really have missed living more closely with other students, but we really think that it's in everybody's best interest that we hang tight for spring and continue the course of action that we've got currently in place.
Thank you. I just want to see whether or not we are running out of chat. Yeah, we are starting to get to what appears to be the end of questions. So I hope more of you have questions that you'd like to answer. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into monologue, which is bad. So here's one that has been answered in a chat, but worth talking about, I think, because I think a lot of people have this as a concern. Will we need to use our own sick leave balance if we are exposed or test positive beginning January 1st? As a fairly new staff, I don't have sufficient sick leave to get through even a single period of quarantine. Peggy, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, so I think the answer is we need to, hopefully understand more of what the FFCRA, what the federal government's going to do for us. We've not made that decision. And I think that's something that, the president, his EC will need to have discussions on, whether we want to move persons into paid admin leave who test positive and are not able to come to work. We need to have those conversations for sure, and they're being discussed. They're also being discussed across the system as well, with other schools to see what they're considering as well. It's an issue for sure that we've got our eyes on.
Terrific. Thank you. I think it's important that people, have an understanding of that, and that they know that we're kind of noodling our way through this as these issues arise. I'm trying to think if I can turn this into a question. Let's see. Nope, can't quite figure out what the question is there. Sorry. So let us turn on. Now we're looking very far into the future, which is a lovely thing to think about. What about summer activities and classes? Asking Debbie Storrs and Karyn Plumm.
Sure. Hi, I'll take a stab at it. Again, it all depends on the vaccine and how many of us are vaccinated and when we feel like it's safe. At this point in time, summer classes are scheduled in the same manner, online, face-to-face with the COVID capacity. Same with the activities. So we do have a lot of summer activities, and those trying to sort of pause and wait until we know what way we can offer them. But if we have to plan on them now, we should plan on them in terms of the same COVID protocol. Karyn, did you want to add anything to that? No? Okay, thanks.
All right. Next question, I think we'll see. I would imagine this is both a Cara Halgren and Debbie Storrs question at least. Should student employees be returning to campus to work after finals or after Christmas, or should they be allowed to work remotely?
Well, I would suggest that that's probably a conversation between the supervisor and the student, but that regardless, we certainly are interested in making sure that students are healthy and that they're getting tested. So if they go away for a while and that they come back to campus, that again, there are testing opportunities for them to take advantage of. But again, when a student worker works, I really think is probably between the student and the supervisor.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add except, student workers are really vital to many of our areas, the library, IT, and others. And so please have a conversation with your supervisor, particularly if we can see if there's some flexibility in doing things remotely.
Thank you. Here's a great question for Rosy. And this, Rosy, you may get a little technical here. Is UND going to change COVID quarantine timeframe to meet new North Dakota recommendations, i.e. 10 days?
Excuse me. Yes, we are complying with the CDC guidelines. The blog is updated today as we speak. So people that are, it's important to remember that isolation, if your positive case has not changed, that still remains 10 days. And quarantine, the period has been reduced from 14 days to 10 days. And if you are able, this is where it gets technical, if you're able to get a test on day 6 of your quarantine period, you could actually, and it's negative and you have no symptoms, you could actually shorten your quarantine to even 7 days. I just want to caution people not to take the 7 days as the new quarantine time frame. The quarantine time is 10 days and it will never be, at this point, it is not less than 7 days. You can't test out of less than 7 days. So you can't test out of quarantine yet. You can potentially shorten it by a couple of days if you test day 6 or day 7 and get a negative test and don't have any symptoms. That will be on the blog. I think as today continues, we'll get it out there.
Thanks, Rosy. I think that it's an interesting thing because what you're really seeing is the CDC trying to understand how to combine what's medically optimal with what they actually see in terms of individual behavior on a massive scale across our entire country. And what you're actually seeing is them trying to adapt, you know, what's really pragmatic versus what's medically optimal. And that's what they're coming up with. So it's quite an interesting, you know, thing to observe, and probably makes some sense. Quick question for Dr. Halgren. Any idea how many students will be on campus during the break?
You know, students who are planning to stay on break need to request that through housing. In the past, we've typically only had 100 or less students stay on campus. I'm not sure of current numbers. If I find out before the end of the call today, I will let you know.
Okay, interesting. You know, maybe even one might regard provocative kind of a question for Jeff Holm. Dr. Holm, should professors be required to lecture while we are online? Many students are concerned about having to teach themselves.
I guess my simple answer would be our Teaching Transformation Development Academy has wonderful options available to help you. The key is to engage with and keep students engaged in your course content. Now, sometimes that means live lectures. Sometimes that means recorded lectures. Sometimes it means other things. But I think the key component is how best, given your course content, what can you do to best keep students engaged in your course and learning to the best of the situation, the best the situation allows. And as I said, contacting TDA is a great place to start if you're not sure how to do that.
Dr. Storrs.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, and I really have appreciated how much work faculty have put into the online and hybrid courses. And one of the things that we have been able to communicate to our students is that there's been a lot of support from TDA, a lot of faculty engagement on how to transfer knowledge and the kind of discussion in an online environment. And we've been able to really focus on the quality. And so the more that you can engage students, as Jeff mentions, the better. But I would not say that a requirement. I think we really have to give faculty the flexibility on deciding how to help students learn in their classroom. And, you know, sometimes pure lecture is the best way to engage students. It's that's why we've invested a lot of time, even previous to the pandemic, on flipping the classroom, so more active engagement and active learning. And again, I would just encourage you, if you need support, please reach out to TDA. We're here to help you. And the focus is on quality education, and that can look very different for different faculty.
Okay, quick question for Dr. Karyn Plumm. Are spring finals going to be online only like in the fall?
I don't really know the answer to that question. I think it's going to depend on our situation. Right now, I would say yes, we will plan to have them online for the spring. We'll have to wait and see if we have a vaccine that early. It doesn't sound like we will, but if we were, then that might change the situation. But for now, plan for your finals to be online.
And another quick question, I think, for both you know, Debbie Storrs and Karyn Plumm. Please remind us of how classes will be held the first 2 weeks of spring semester. Will they all be online?
Classes after the winter break will occur just as they're scheduled. So either face-to-face / hybrid or online. So, you know, I just wanted to share with you, they're already scheduled for the spring. So you know how your spring courses are currently scheduled. And as of now, 67% of our classes are scheduled to be face-to-face, again, with reduced classroom capacity, so some sort of hybrid component to it, and about 33% are scheduled completely online.
So I love thematic consistency. It just makes me so happy until I can't take it anymore. So along that theme, if we have been working remotely and have found that we are able to serve our students and complete our job well, would there be an opportunity after COVID to remain remote? What an interesting question.
Jed, we want you to be happy, so I'm glad the thematic questions are making you smile. I'll just say this. I think we should take a lot of the lessons from the pandemic and see which ones we want to carry forward. So if there's an interest in continuing to teach online and you can engage your students in that manner, I think that should be a discussion with your chair and your dean. But I think that's one of many lessons, right? The flexibility, the kind of support we're providing faculty, and other lessons that we might want to carry forward as well.
Thank you. Quick question for Peggy. Why do essential workers who have been here every day since the start of COVID need to track their hours daily, but remote employees are not required to?
I actually just answered that in chat, but I'm happy to answer that here. It's actually the reverse. So those who are working on campus, essential or otherwise, working on campus and not remotely are not required to turn in a productivity report unless maybe their supervisor is asking them to. Those who work remotely are supposed to be turning in activity reports to their supervisor each week. And further, we did get a question about whether this is going to be continued in the new year. We have not discussed that. My assumption is probably if we're going to continue to be working more remotely or have folks that continue to work remotely at this point, but that has not been discussed.
Thanks, Peggy. Quick question for Rosy. And I can also speak to this a little bit myself. Are the results for testing going to improve in the near future? If you are tested and don't hear back for 5 to 7 days, it is quite nerve-wracking. Yeah, I can understand that. I think, you know, what we're seeing here is a dichotomy between where the tests are sent to, right? So on one hand, we have tests which are often done on Saturdays. They often go to the state lab. They're less volume. The state lab, if the state lab can handle them, they go there. And anecdotally, we're hearing that people who got tested on Saturday got their results back quite rapidly. On the other hand, most currently, we're seeing testing results lengthen when they are sent to the lab in North Carolina. I would not suggest that you do not get tested on Tuesday and pick Saturday instead, because you never know where the lab tests are going to go. So there's no really good way to game this. The most important thing is to get tested regardless. And of course, the other part of it is if you are getting tested, it's really good to keep wearing masks and observe social distancing until you know whether or not you got it or not. So I think in truth, although I personally do understand the anxiety that it generates, the most important thing to do is to monitor your own symptoms and to really continue to observe the safety precautions that we have, so that if you get your tests back in a day and they're hopefully negative, or you get them back in 5 days and they're hopefully negative, you're still doing the same thing that you've done. I think it would be fair to say that there's a lot of effort to try and improve the response time for testing across the state. Remember, the state has done a great job in terms of testing. It's been a leading state on a per capita basis in terms of testing, and they're working all the time to try and figure out new and improved ways to make that happen. And hopefully we'll be able to adapt to those as we move along. Rosy or Eric, would you like to add? Eric Plummer, our AVP for public safety, would either of you like to add to that little monologue I just did there?
I would echo your monologue, Jed, in that the state health department is well aware of the anxiety it causes when we have delayed resulting to people, as well as the effectiveness of our isolation and contact tracing when we have to wait 4, 5, 6 days to get people notified. There's a lot of work being done to try improve those turnaround times. And that's where I'll leave it at this point, just that it is recognized and they're continually working on trying to improve the process.
I think it would be also important to note that we are working on several different options for testing as well, including the Binax Now test, which will be available to faculty, staff, or students through an appointment at Student Health. And that's more of the antigen rapid test. Now, I do know at the Student Health, they are limiting that right now to symptomatic.
And Eric, to further what you described as a rapid test, the results of this Binex Now test come back in 15 minutes. So it shortens that response time considerably, which is good for contact tracing and isolation and quarantine as well.
Okay, thank you kindly. Quick question for Dr. Karyn Plumm. It looks like there are charges. Oh, sorry, Freudian slip. It looks like there are changes coming to Essential Studies via NDUS. Is UND planning to alter its Essential Studies requirements to match those proposed by NDUS? How might the recommendations for equity, diversity, and inclusion from the task force impact ES requirements?
So that's a great question. There are a couple of pieces to that I want to address. NDUS has approved the option to propose an alternative general education program that is not required for any institution to take part in. Recently, the chair of the Essential Studies Committee sent out an email to department chairs asking them to send to faculty to ask that very question. Is this something that our committee should look at? Should we consider making changes or not? There is no mandate that we have to do that. We have not yet had the chance to talk about the diversity task force's recommendations that were put forth. That is on our agenda for early spring. We're finishing up validation materials right now. But our change in diversity courses for Essential Studies just changed this fall from the previous change that was made a few years ago. So we don't yet have the data on how that results in the assessment for learning outcomes for students in Essential Studies, given the changes in those courses. Our required diversity courses were made much more rigorous and much more specific than they had been previously.
Thank you, Karyn. Quick question for both. This is kind of a nice question. Quick question for both CEO of our foundation, Deanna Carlson-Zink, and Dr. Cara Halgren, and that is there an update for the Angel Fund? How much is left versus how much is still being requested by students? And if you would also kindly comment on the other current use scholarship fund as well, that benefits people who need money in real time to, for scholarship type stuff.
Sure. This is Deanna Carlson-Zink, CEO for the Alumni Association and Foundation. I'll jump in and then Dr. Halgren can add how it's being used. But right now, our goal was to raise $150,000 for the Angel Fund, and we're at just about $200,000 that have been gifted. And our goal was to raise $300,000 because we had a match for this open door scholarship that's really helping students in need right now to come back to school or come to school for the first time. And the newest update from today is we've raised $334,000. So many of you have participated in this. We've had almost 1,000 donors who have reached out to make gifts to these two funds for our students. And we really appreciate you. Thank you for caring for our students in so many different ways, not just in the classroom, but for their other needs. We do have a thank you event as well, virtually, of course, on this Thursday, December 10th at 11:30 to 12:30. And Cassie Gerhardt, Janelle Kilgore are going to be part of that program along with two of our students who have benefited from your gifts. Dr. Halgren, would you talk about how the students and the needs that are still there?
Sure. So at this point, we've had over 300 students, or approximately 300 students that have had their need met. But what I will tell you, and my colleague Cassie Gerhardt just texted me, is that we have greater need than we have resources at this point. So students are continuing to send in their requests for Angel funds. Just to give you a sense of what students are saying as they're completing their application, and these are for students who are funded. Thank you very much. The Angel Fund came in when I needed it most. After not being able to work for 2.5 weeks, I didn't have any income for food and rent. This really helped me out. Thank you so much for this wonderful news. A weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Thank you so much. The Angel Fund allowed me to finish paying off this semester and make my rent payment on time. I can't stress enough how grateful I am. I am grateful for all of you on the call too, who have given previously to the Angel Fund. Again, it is making a difference for students in real time. And again, we would just want to impress upon you is that the need still exists. And we certainly welcome your gifts as we try to meet those needs on behalf of students.
Thank you kindly. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. By my clock, I think we've got about 5 minutes left and probably about 3 minutes for more questions and answers. And then I'm assuming we're going to turn it over to President Armacost for some closing comments. Would you agree that's a reasonable? Okay, cool. It's always good to get at least one thing right a day. So quick question on for Rosy and I think Eric Plummer. Eric Plummer, of course, key person in the system-wide smart restart task force. Will UND be moving to provide rapid saliva testing for spring term? So let's not worry about saliva testing. Let's talk more about rapid testing at a more massive scale. What are we thinking?
Do you want me to jump on that, Eric, or you kind of? We are. I'll start. We are definitely moving forward with the plans to offer rapid mass testing to students, faculty, and staff with the start of the spring semester.
Yep, I would say that it's dependent upon how many tests we get. So depending upon what our allocation is from the state, will drive, how we deploy those tests. And I believe that our goal is going to be to make them as convenient to take as they can be made convenient. Because this is one of those things where it's going to be important for us to get the largest number of people tested that we can get. And the good news is, just think it's hopefully, if all goes well, just a finite number of weeks. When did you ever think you would say just a finite number of weeks before vaccines come? So that's a good thing to think about. But get tested anyway. Okay. Another question on mass testing events for Rosy. Will there be any UND mass testing events during Christmas break for people hoping to travel right at the end of the break, or people wanting to be tested right before classroom work continues?
Yes, we are continuing to offer the testing events every Tuesday and roughly every other Saturday. We modified some of the Saturday schedules to help bring in the testing needs for post-Thanksgiving and post-Christmas. If you go to the UND COVID website, you'll find the testing dates and times listed on there.
All right, I think we've pretty much hit our allotted time for questions and answers, and I want to turn it over to President Armacost.
Yeah, thanks for taking the lead on this and directing all the questions. Let me first thank all the panelists for being here. You do amazing work day in and day out, and thanks for providing such clear answers to the questions that were asked. To those who attended as questioners, as members of the audience, thanks for tuning in. We hope that this provided good information to you for the remainder of the semester and for what to expect as we head into the spring. I truly appreciate, as does everyone on this call, all the hard work that has gone into making this fall semester so successful. We've had ups and downs with respect to the virus, and we've put resources, many resources to make this happen. The state has been generous in supporting testing, in supporting contact tracing, and our goal is to make sure that we minimize the risk to you and make sure your health and safety is first and foremost. As we go into the spring, of course, that balance of delivering our educational mission with the desire to minimize risk is right at the forefront. And Jed, you're right. We're weeks away. There's countably number of weeks as we go forward. But we have to be patient because we don't know what disruptions are going to happen this spring. And through all this, we'll stay together. We'll work hard. We'll keep communicating with you. We'll have town halls like this in the spring semester as well. So thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the semester. Happy holidays, and we'll see you soon.